You keep showing up. Every call, every text, every pull on your spirit you answer. You give your time, your energy, your peace, sometimes even your sleep, because you don't want anyone to feel abandoned the way you once did. You know what it feels like to be left on read, to be forgotten, to be needed and still neglected. So now, when the tables have turned and it's you they call, you keep showing up. And you tell yourself it's love, you convince yourself it's loyalty, but deep down, something inside of you is breaking. Quietly, slowly, secretly, because here's the truth nobody told you. You can't keep showing up for everyone without eventually going missing from yourself. You were never designed to be everyone's answer, everyone's counselor, everyone's comfort zone, but somewhere along the way you confused being present with being purposeful. And that's where the drain began, not because you don't love them, not because your heart isn't big, but because being constantly available has made you a stop on their journey when you were meant to be a destination for something greater. You've become a convenience, not a calling, and you feel it. You feel it when you say yes while your soul is screaming no. You feel it when your body is exhausted, but you're still pouring, still smiling, still pretending that this is okay. But it's not okay. It's not okay to keep betraying yourself in the name of being needed. It's not okay to keep silencing your own pain so someone else can feel comfortable. It's not okay to water everyone else's garden while yours is bone dry. But the reason it's so hard to stop is because you've wrapped your worth around your availability. You started believing that if you're not constantly accessible, you're not lovable. You thought that being wanted was the same as being valued, but they're not the same. Being needed is not always a compliment. Sometimes it's a trap to keep you too busy helping everyone else so you never turn around and realize your own soul is starving. You are not the solution to everyone's crisis. You are not the one who has to carry it all. That's not your assignment. That's not your burden. You've mistaken urgency for importance, but just because something feels urgent doesn't mean it deserves your presence. Some people call you not because they respect your wisdom, but because they are addicted to your availability. And there's a difference. You've got to stop letting guilt be the reason you give access. Guilt will have you showing up to parties you weren't invited to. Guilt will have you answering calls when your spirit is on the verge of collapse. Guilt will have you solving problems that were never yours to fix. And then you look around and wonder why you feel so empty, why you feel so overlooked, why you feel like everyone is leaning on you, but no one is lifting you. Because they've learned how to depend on your exhaustion, and you taught them how. You taught them you'd always be there, no matter how they treated you. You taught them that your yes didn't need consideration. You taught them that your boundaries were more like suggestions than standards. And now you're wondering why they never paused to ask, how are you really doing? Because you made it look easy. You made it look unshakable. You became the strong one, the stable one, the shoulder, the safety net. But even rocks wear down over time. Even mountains need rest. And you, my dear, are no exception. You're not selfish for wanting space. You're not wrong for choosing peace. And you're not a bad person for finally deciding to stop being available to everyone. Because the truth is, your constant presence is draining your purpose. Every unnecessary yes is stealing time from your assignment. Every moment spent rescuing someone who refuses to swim is a moment you could be building, healing, growing. It's not pride, it's preservation. It's not rejection, it's redirection. Stop showing up where your soul is shrinking. Stop making homes in places that only know how to use you. Stop answering calls that leave you feeling emptier than before. You were never created to be everything to everyone. Start choosing you. There comes a moment when you look around at the people in your life, the ones who know your story, the ones who have walked with you, the ones you thought would grow with you, and you realize that some of them are too close to what you're trying to become. You've outgrown the environment, but you're still granting access to people who only know the older version of you. The version that was more agreeable, more available, more willing to shrink to make everyone else feel comfortable. And I get it, you loved them, you still do, that love runs deep, and loyalty is one of your most beautiful traits. But love without boundaries is not love, it's bondage, and if you don't get clear on that, you'll keep giving access to people who treat your presence like a right, not a privilege. You can't keep inviting everyone into rooms they've proven they don't respect. Some people only knock because they know you'll open the door. Not because they're grateful, not because they're invested, but because they know your heart is soft and your guard is low. They bank on your inability to say no. They count on the part of you that still believes you owe them something. But you don't. You don't owe anyone unrestricted access to your peace. You don't owe them access to your growth. You don't owe them access to the healed version of you when they only showed up to feast on your brokenness. Access is earned. It's not distributed like samples in a grocery store. It's granted to those who have proven they can handle it with care. There's a cost to proximity. You're not who you used to be. You've been through too much. You've learned too much. You've healed from things nobody even knew you were carrying. And you don't have the emotional capacity to keep babysitting people's entitlement just because you used to be available. Some of you are still trying to keep everyone close because you're afraid of being misunderstood. Afraid of someone calling you changed, like that's an insult. But, baby, you are changed, and you were supposed to be. You weren't meant to stay stuck in the same patterns, the same rooms, the same cycles just to make other people feel better about staying the same. You were called to grow, and with growth comes separation, not bitterness, not hatred, just boundaries. And boundaries don't mean you don't love them. It just means you finally love you enough to stop giving the most sacred parts of your spirit to people who only show up when they're hungry. You're not a buffet of emotional availability. You are not their forever safety net, especially when they've never once asked if you had something soft to land on. There's nothing wrong with tightening the circle. There's nothing wrong with reevaluating who gets to walk with you in this next chapter. You're allowed to look back at some connections and say, this was beautiful for that season, but it can't go with me where I'm headed. That's not being cold. That's being clear, and clarity is holy. You've got to protect what's sacred, protect your growth, protect your healing, protect your momentum, because the wrong access at the wrong time can sabotage everything you've been fighting to build. Some people are not enemies, but they are distractions, and distractions are dangerous when you're on divine assignment. Stop apologizing for raising your standards. Stop explaining your boundaries to people who never respected them in the first place. You don't owe them a front row seat just because they knew you when your stage was still empty. There's a new level calling your name, and not everyone can go. You've got to be okay with letting some people love you from a distance. Be okay with being labeled as different because you finally chose discipline over dysfunction. Be okay with the silence that comes when you stop responding to chaos. It's not rejection, it's release. Because access is a privilege, and you finally remembered you were never meant to be available to just anyone. There's a dangerous lie we learn early, this idea that being needed means we're valuable. That if someone depends on us, leans on us, calls on us in their mess, it must mean we're important in their life. So we stretch ourselves thin trying to be useful, trying to be essential. We answer every late night call. We show up when they're falling apart. We carry their weight like it's our cross to bear. And for a moment it feels good. It feels like purpose. But the truth is, being needed is not the same as being valued. Some people only keep you close because you're useful. They don't honor your heart. They harvest your strength. They don't see your worth. They see your ability to fix what's broken in them. And the minute you stop showing up on command, the minute you pause and say, I need a moment for me, they label you selfish, difficult, disloyal, not because you changed, but because you stopped letting them use you. You've got to stop confusing someone's panic with your purpose. Just because they're in crisis doesn't mean it's your assignment to rescue them. Some people cry for help, not because they want healing, but because they want attention, and you're the safe one. The dependable one, the one who always says yes, even when your soul is begging you to say no. They know that about you. And they use that, but let's tell the truth tonight. There's a difference between being loved and being needed. Love gives, but it also sees. It sees your exhaustion. It sees your sacrifices. It sees your silence when you're hurting. But need only takes. Need only shows up when it's hungry. It drains without asking. It pulls without pausing. It demands without gratitude. And you keep showing up for that because somewhere inside, you still believe that if you stop being their hero, they'll stop loving you. But here's the part that stings. They never loved you, not really. They loved the role you played. They loved the way you cleaned up the mess, filled the gaps, made life easier for them. They loved your function, not your fullness, and deep down you know it. You know it because when you finally needed someone, they went silent. When your world started unraveling, no one showed up with the same urgency you gave them. When your heart was breaking, they didn't even notice. Because their love had terms, their loyalty had limits, and your availability was the only thing holding it all together. But you are not a tool. You are not a lifeline. You are not a walking solution to problems you didn't create. You are a person, a soul, a spirit that gets tired, and you've been carrying people who were never meant to be your assignment. You've let your need to be needed blind you to the truth. They don't see you, not the real you, not the growing, evolving, aching, worthy you. They only see what you give, and as long as you keep giving, they'll keep taking. It's time to stop. It's time to step back, not in bitterness, but in boldness, because when you stop rushing to their rescue, you start realizing how often they left you behind. When you stop being their solution, you start seeing all the times they treated your pain like a footnote. And that clarity, it may hurt at first, but it's healing you. It's freeing you. You deserve people who love you for who you are, not what you provide. You deserve to be poured into the way you pour. You deserve rest, restoration, and relationships that don't require you to collapse to prove your commitment. Let them call you distant. Let them say you changed. Let them whisper that you've become unavailable. Because you finally have, and maybe that's the most loving thing you've done for yourself in a long, long time. There's something sacred about your anointing, something weighty, powerful, undeniable. It's not just talent. It's not just charisma. It's not just the way you light up a room or hold people together when everything's falling apart. No, it's deeper than that. It's what God whispered into your soul when He shaped you. It's what life tried to crush but couldn't kill. It's what you carry when no one sees you. But here's what you don't always realize. Your anointing has a cost, and if you keep making yourself available to every voice, every need, every demand, you're spreading what's sacred so thin that it starts to lose its strength. There's a reason oil was only poured on those who were chosen. It wasn't spilled in the streets. It wasn't thrown around for anyone to trample. It was set apart for purpose, for power, and you've been letting too many hands touch what was meant to be holy. You've been answering too many calls, showing up in too many places, saying yes out of guilt, out of habit, out of fear that if you don't show up, you'll be forgotten. But all that availability is costing you something. It's diluting the power of what's in you. You're carrying something heavy, and you keep giving it away in pieces to people who don't even recognize the weight. You've been trying to be everything to everyone, and somewhere in the middle of all that doing, you stopped being still. You stopped tending to the fire inside you. You stopped listening to the voice that told you to rest, to pull back, to preserve the oil. And I know why. I know what it feels like to believe that being chosen means being constantly accessible. That being called means you owe everyone a piece of you, but no one told you that even oil runs out if it's not protected. No one warned you that even something divine can become ordinary when it's mishandled enough times. You're not tired because you're weak. You're tired because you're pouring without pause. You're giving without guarding. And the people pulling on you, they're not evil. They're just hungry. And if you don't create boundaries, they will keep feeding off of you until there's nothing left but a shadow of the vessel God formed you to be. You've got to learn how to say no, not out of bitterness, but out of obedience, out of reverence for the call on your life. You've got to know when to step back and say, this oil isn't for everyone. This gift isn't on demand. This presence isn't free. Because when you treat something as if it has no value, don't be surprised when people do the same. There's power in your voice. Power in your presence, power in your discernment, but if you keep scattering it everywhere, you'll forget what it feels like to sit in stillness and remember who you are without all the noise. You'll forget what it feels like to be full, and some of you haven't felt full in a long time, because you've been living half, empty, convincing yourself that purpose looks like exhaustion. But your calling was never meant to kill you. It was meant to fill you, and anything that's constantly draining you is not aligned with that. There's a version of you on the other side of rest, on the other side of restraint. A version of you that's powerful not because you're always available, but because you're intentional. Because you stopped trying to be everything for everyone and started being obedient to what heaven assigned to you. Every time you say yes without checking your spirit, you risk compromising what God trusted you to carry. And this oil, it breaks yokes, it changes atmospheres, but not when it's handed out carelessly, not when it's poured into cups that were never meant to hold it. So protect your oil, protect your assignment, protect your peace. You don't need to prove your worth through your availability. The power in you was never meant to be accessed on demand. You're not Netflix. You're not a hotline. You're not divine tech support. You are a vessel, a temple, a carrier of glory, and glory doesn't answer every knock at the door. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing, not out of pride, not out of anger, but out of wisdom. Because silence isn't weakness, it's warfare. Silence is where clarity is born. Silence is where you remember who you are when the noise of the world tries to convince you otherwise. And when you've spent your life being everything to everybody, silence can feel uncomfortable at first. It can feel like punishment, like isolation, but it's not. It's sacred. It's necessary. It's where the soul goes to breathe. You've been so available for everyone else's noise that you can't even hear yourself think. You're always answering, always explaining, always responding. You answer the text, the call, the questions, the drama. You try to soften your tone, adjust your words, make them feel safe, even while you're falling apart inside. But let me tell you something, you don't owe everyone an answer, you don't owe everyone an explanation. You don't have to set yourself on fire just to prove you're warm. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for you is stop talking. Stop defending yourself. Stop giving people a front row seat to your healing when all they do is take notes to use against you later. Because not every reaction deserves your response. Not every invitation into chaos needs to be accepted. Some people know exactly how to trigger you. They know your patterns, they know your heart, and they manipulate your empathy to pull you into battles you never asked to fight. And you keep showing up, trying to prove you're not what they say you are, trying to show them that you mean well, that your heart is pure. But hear me, you don't have to prove peace to people who profit from your pain. There is healing in silence, there's authority in silence, there's a kind of strength in stillness that makes insecure people nervous. Because when you stop reacting, when you stop trying to explain, they no longer have power over your presence. When you stop picking up every call, stop responding to every cry, stop running every time someone screams help, you reclaim yourself. You don't have to be the fixer anymore. You don't have to play the savior. You don't have to answer to guilt and call it grace. Some of the most spiritual decisions you'll ever make won't look holy to other people. They'll look selfish. They'll say you changed, that you've become distant, that you don't care anymore, but the truth is you started caring differently. You started caring about your spirit, your sanity, your peace. You started making room for your own voice again. And that's something to be proud of. There is a version of you that is buried beneath all the noise, beneath the requests, the demands, the performance, and you can't find her if you're always tuned into everyone else. Some of you haven't heard your own voice in so long that you wouldn't even recognize her if she whispered. But she's still there, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the smiles, beneath the instinct to be strong for everybody else. Silence is where she waits for you. It's not always easy to pull back, especially when you're used to being the reliable one. Especially when people have gotten used to their emergency being more important than your boundaries. But you've got to stop allowing guilt to dictate your access. You've got to stop measuring your value by how quickly you respond to other people's chaos. Some healing happens in conversations, yes, but some healing happens in the quiet, when you finally stop explaining your heart to people who have already made up their minds. When you stop justifying your boundaries to people who have never honored them. When you let silence speak for you, and it will. Because silence doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you're choosing peace over performance. It means you're choosing to preserve your energy for what actually matters. It means you've grown enough to know that every cry for help isn't a call from God. So don't be afraid to go quiet. Don't be afraid to leave that message unread. Don't be afraid to protect your presence like the sanctuary it is. Let them wonder, let them assume, let them talk, because the more silent you become, the more clearly you start to hear yourself. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your healing is step away, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in sacred separation. You've spent so much of your life entangled, emotionally available, physically accessible, spiritually wide open, for people who never once asked what it cost you to stay connected. You've kept doors open for the sake of loyalty, for the sake of history, for the sake of not being misunderstood. But healing doesn't happen in a crowd. Healing doesn't happen when you're always on call. Healing requires space. Space to think, space to breathe, space to remember who you were before life told you to be everything for everybody. It's hard to walk away when your heart still cares. It's hard to put distance between yourself and people you love. But love without boundaries will break you. It will stretch you until you forget what it feels like to be whole. Some of you are walking around shattered not because you don't want to heal, but because you haven't made the room for it. You're surrounded by noise, surrounded by opinions, surrounded by expectations, and you wonder why your soul still feels heavy. It's because you're trying to recover in a room that keeps re-injuring you. Healing demands that you step back from the places where your peace was traded for performance. That you stop returning to relationships that only love the version of you that sacrifices herself. You don't have to explain why you need space. You don't have to justify your stillness. You don't have to convince anyone that your growth is real. Some transformations are too deep for others to understand, and that's okay. They don't have to understand. They're not supposed to. You've carried everyone else for so long. You've been the strong one, the steady one, the dependable one. And somewhere in the middle of all that holding it together, you forgot what it felt like to let go. To let yourself fall apart without guilt, to cry without hurrying to wipe your face, to sit in silence without reaching for your phone to check if someone else needs you. But you need your own attention, you need your own compassion, you need your own patience. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's lonely, sometimes it looks like unanswered calls, sometimes it feels like distance that can't be explained. But trust me, it's holy. There are things about yourself you can only discover when you're alone. There are truths that can only rise to the surface when you're no longer performing for love. And when that truth shows up, it won't come with applause. It won't come with likes or validation. It'll come quietly. It'll come in the middle of a silent night when your phone isn't ringing, and your spirit finally feels safe enough to exhale. And when it comes, you'll start to realize how much you've been carrying. You'll see the version of yourself that kept showing up out of guilt, not grace. You'll feel the weight of all the yes answers you gave when your heart was begging for a no, and it'll hurt. It'll grieve you because healing always costs something. Sometimes it costs connection, sometimes it costs comfort. But it always gives you back your clarity. The thing is, you can't rise while holding on to everything that kept you grounded. Some attachments can't survive your transformation. Some bonds were only built to survive your brokenness. And once you start to heal, they don't know how to sit with you in wholeness. That's not your fault. That's just truth. So stop going back to what you outgrew. Stop making homes in places you were only meant to pass through. Stop giving access to people who only loved you when you were available on demand. Growth is lonely, but it's sacred. There's something sacred about disappearing to heal, about stepping back without announcing it, about choosing yourself without guilt, because the people who truly love you, they'll understand, and the ones who don't, they were only ever attached to the version of you that kept bleeding for them. Don't be afraid to walk away. Don't be afraid to be misunderstood. Don't be afraid to choose silence, space, solitude, because some resurrections require tombs.